We start with our Newsmaker segment and get the perspective of a veteran Kansas side lawmaker on issues local, national, and beyond. Representative Kevin Yoder of the 3rd District, a Republican, is now in his 4th term in the U.S. House, easily winning re-election last November. Before going to Congress, Yoder served in the Kansas legislature. He's back home while Congress is in recess, and we are pleased to welcome Congressman Yoder of the 3rd District to Ruckus. Good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on the program.
And you represent in this metro area, Johnson and Wyandotte counties.
And a little bit of Miami.
Right. Now that you're back home and had a chance to talk to some of your constituents, what are they talking about?
Well, they certainly have a lot of opinions about what's happening in our country right now. You know, President Trump was elected as a change agent, and things are changing, and that's been disruptive and certainly caused some folks to call in and share with us their opinions, which frankly we appreciate. We've heard from a lot of people on a lot of different topics. Certainly people are concerned about some of the executive orders. They're concerned about what's going to happen with their health care. And some of the appointments, Betsy DeVos, for example, all those things have been examples of things people have called in.
What do you think of these town hall meetings that are going on around the country with some of your colleagues where they're getting shouted at and shouted down and waving placards in the audience? Do you think that's genuine frustration and anger?
Yeah, I do. I do think people are frustrated and concerned that maybe their government isn't going to go in the direction they want it to go.
The direction the voters selected in the election?
Right, just a few months ago. But there are folks who, didn't win the election or don't like who was elected. And nationally, I think they've got some frustrations about Donald Trump, and they're expressing that. Most of the concerns we've heard are less about maybe my representation, but more about concerns about Donald Trump.
Well, you were a Trump supporter, were you not, during the primary?
We supported him over Hillary Clinton, for sure.
Well, yeah.
In the primary, he was not my first choice. I liked Marco Rubio and a number of other candidates first, but once it came down to a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, we leaned his direction.
What do you think about his performance thus far? He has gotten a lot done.
Well, I think when he focuses on, he was a change agent. When he focuses on reforming Washington, creating jobs and growing the economy and national security, I think he has broad public support. I think some of the ways in which he's done that, the refugee order was, I think, the implementation of it, I had some grave concerns about. I think, some of his appointments, we mentioned Betsy DeVos. Mike, we have some of the best schools in America right here in Kansas. What we don't want is a new Secretary of Education changing how great our schools are and forcing us to apply some of these national standards.
All right, one of the things that people talk about a lot is a replacement for Obamacare. The Congress has voted to replace it. Have any final decisions been made? Well, on what to replace it with?
Yeah, so Congress is working right now. We have a number of committees working on solutions to replace the health care plan, and there's a division in Washington. Some people want to repeal it. Some people want to repeal and replace it. And I think what we all know is that...
Well, it's been repealed, right?
Well, it hasn't been repealed yet. First step has been
taken.
Right, a first step has occurred, but it has not been repealed yet. I think most Americans agree that our health care system is broken and it needs to be fixed. I've been pushing back on Republican leaders who might not want to replace the bill with something that would be better. They just want to repeal it. I've listened to a lot of my constituents when I've been home. I had a group of constituents I met with this week that are all ACA supporters, because I want to make
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act supporters. Yeah, they like it. The folks who like it, trying to figure out what they like about it. And Mike, what I've heard is that we have to continue to protect people with pre-existing conditions. That we can't go back to a system in which people
keep children up to age 26.
Correct.
But I've heard Republican leaders like Paul Ryan and others say that's going to be part of the replacement.
That's exactly right. And we've been pushing on Paul and other leaders to ensure that they listen to those voices in our community. And what I've said, Mike, is that I represent Republicans, Democrats, and independents, and I'm their only voice in Washington. And so we've been trying to forge a consensus to figure out how we fix this broken healthcare system. And we have committees in Washington that are taking our input as legislators and putting together a proposal that I think will improve our healthcare system for all Americans.
Are you confident there will be a tax cut for corporations and for individuals this year?
Well,
income tax cut?
Well, I think what's going to happen is tax reform. Right now, we have a tax system.
Well, the president says tax cuts, doesn't he?
I think there'll be a tax reduction, but I do think it'll be tax reform that's the key here. We've got a.
But what's the difference?
Well, we've got a tax code that's too large, too cumbersome, not simple. We're going to simplify the tax code. We're going to flatten it out, meaning we're going to eliminate deductions and exemptions and loopholes that many corporations use to not pay their fair share of taxes. So we want to make it fairer and flatter. And for some companies, that would be a reduction. For Americans, that would be a reduction. But for those who are cheating the code right now, taxes might go up for them.
There's been a lot of speculation now that your colleague, Lynn Jenkins, has announced she's not going to run for the Kansas GOP nomination, gubernatorial nomination next year. Can we get you interested in the governor's race?
I don't know. You know, we have so many big challenges in Washington, and we've just touched on some of them today with health care and tax reform. And I'm so focused on doing my job there.
Would you say no way you couldn't possibly consider that?
Well, look, I served in Topeka for a number of years.
I
I was the appropriations chairman. I know the budget there. And I will tell you more than anything, Mike, I love our public schools. I love our community. I grew up in Kansas, grew up on a farm here. And now, Mike, I have 2 little girls. And I want to make sure they grow up in the greatest state in the country. And so I'll serve in any way that I can help improve, you know, the lives of our constituents. But right now I'm focused on serving in Congress.
Let me see how this sounds. Governor Yoder. Well, not bad, huh? Hey, thanks very much for coming in. It's great
Thanks
to
for
see
having
you
me on
again.
the show.
That is Kansas 3rd District Congressman Kevin Yoder. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus.